Hello and welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to help you keep a conversation going in English.
And this time, we're doing it with a very natural, everyday topic: plants, gardens, and things people grow at home.
Exactly. This is a great topic because it helps you practice asking follow-up questions, reacting naturally, and keeping the conversation moving.
So this lesson is not only about plants, it's really about how to build a natural conversation.
But before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
It helps more learners practice English in a natural, real-life way.
First, listen to our dialogue.
Then we'll come back and explain the key phrases step by step. Let's get started.
Hi, thanks for coming over. I thought this would be a perfect place for today's lesson.
Hi, yes, I can see why. It's lovely out here. Everything looks so green and peaceful, and it already feels like a good place for a relaxed conversation.
Exactly. And I think today's topic is perfect for conversation practice because it's one of those real-life subjects that can start simply and then grow into a much longer talk.
That makes sense. So what are we talking about today?
Today, we're practicing how to keep a conversation going, and our topic is gardens, plants, and growing things at home.
That's a great topic. People often ask simple things like, do you like gardening, or do you have any plants at home? But then they don't know how to continue the conversation naturally.
So let's do that today. Let me start with something simple. Do you enjoy gardening?
To be honest, yes, I do. Although I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I like the idea of growing things, taking care of them, and seeing small changes over time. There's something very satisfying about it, even if it takes patience.
That's a really nice answer. So you do enjoy it, but in a realistic way.
Yeah, exactly. I like it, but I'm not one of those people who know absolutely everything about every plant.
That already sounds very natural. So what do you usually grow, if anything?
It depends on the season, really. If we're talking about outside, I like simple things that are not too difficult to manage. Herbs are always a good choice, and sometimes I grow tomatoes, salad leaves, or a few flowers if I have enough space and time.
That sounds lovely. What kind of herbs do you usually grow?
Usually basil, mint, and sometimes parsley. They're useful, they smell nice, and it feels good when you can just go outside and pick something fresh for cooking.
That's true. It makes cooking feel better somehow. Do you usually grow vegetables too, or mostly herbs?
Mostly herbs and a few easy vegetables. I like the idea of growing more, but I think vegetables require a bit more regular attention, especially if the weather changes a lot.
That makes sense. Really, weather changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. One week everything looks healthy, and then suddenly it's too dry, too wet, too cold, or too windy.
That's so true. So what do you usually find easiest to grow?
Probably herbs, honestly. They feel a bit more forgiving. If I forget something small, they don't always punish me immediately. Tomatoes are a bit more dramatic.
That's such a good way to put it. Tomatoes are dramatic.
They really are. One day they look wonderful, and then suddenly they look unhappy for no clear reason.
That sounds very realistic. And what about flowers? Do you enjoy growing flowers too?
Yes, I do. Although I usually choose simple ones. I like flowers that make the garden feel brighter without needing too much complicated care. I'm more interested in something that looks cheerful and natural than something very rare or difficult.
That sounds nice. What kind of flowers do you usually like?
I like lavender because it smells lovely and looks calm and classic. I also like flowers that attract bees and butterflies because then the whole garden feels more alive.
That's a really nice point. So it's not only about how the plants look, but also about the feeling they create.
That's true. A garden feels different when there's movement in it. Bees, butterflies, even birds nearby. It makes the space feel active and peaceful at the same time.
I really like that. Do you usually spend a lot of time in the garden or just a little now and then?
It depends on the week. Sometimes I only spend a short time outside, just watering things and checking how everything looks. But if the weather's good and I have more energy, I can stay out much longer.
That makes sense. What do you usually do first when you go into the garden?
Usually I look around first. I check whether anything looks dry, whether something needs more support, whether weeds are growing too quickly, or whether anything looks damaged.
That's very practical. And do pests ever attack your plants?
Yes, unfortunately, they do. Not all the time, but often enough to be annoying. Sometimes it's small insects on the leaves, and sometimes something starts eating the plants before you even notice what's happening.
That's so frustrating. What do you usually do when that happens?
First, I try to look closely and work out what the problem actually is. I don't like doing anything too dramatic immediately. Sometimes the answer is simple. Remove damaged leaves, clean the plant a little, or move it if it's in the wrong place.
That sounds sensible, so you don't panic straight away.
I try not to. Although, to be honest, when you see pests on something you've been taking care of, it's hard not to feel annoyed.
Yes, of course. Do you usually use anything special against pests?
I try to keep it simple if I can. Sometimes just checking plants regularly helps because you notice problems earlier, and sometimes improving airflow, watering properly, or not overcrowding plants makes a big difference.
That's interesting. So good care in general helps prevent problems.
Exactly. A lot of plant problems start when the conditions aren't right.
That reminds me, do you ever lose plants completely, or are you usually quite lucky?
Oh, definitely, yes. I've lost plants before. Anyone who says they've never lost a plant is probably not being completely honest.
That makes me feel better somehow.
It should. I think losing a few plants is part of learning. You start to understand what works, what doesn't, and which kinds of plants suit your space and routine.
That's such a useful phrase. Which kinds of plants suit your space and routine?
Yes, because not every plant suits every person. Some people love caring for delicate plants every day, and some people need something simpler and more forgiving.
That's so true. So what about plants inside the house? Do you like houseplants too?
Yes, I do. I actually think houseplants change the feeling of a room very quickly. Even one or two plants can make a room feel calmer, fresher, and more alive.
I completely agree. What kind of houseplants do you like the most?
I prefer plants that are attractive but not too demanding. I like green leafy plants that make a room feel soft and natural, but I don't want something that needs constant attention every day.
That makes sense. So you like plants, but you also want to live your life.
You're absolutely right. I want plants to bring calm, not stress.
That's such a good line. Do you have many houseplants?
Not too many, but enough to notice. I'd say I have a few in the living room, one or two in the kitchen, and maybe one in the bedroom. I don't want the whole house to feel like a jungle.
Really, I quite like that look sometimes.
I do too, visually. I love it when a room looks full of plants in photos, but in real life, I think I prefer a balance.
That makes sense. I like how they look, of course, but I also like the small routine of caring for them. Watering them, chatting them, wiping the leaves sometimes. It can feel quite calming.
That sounds lovely. So for you, the routine is part of the pleasure.
Exactly. I wouldn't say I want dozens of difficult plants, but I do enjoy having some green life around me.
What kind of plants do you usually keep indoors?
I like simple, beautiful plants that can live happily in normal indoor conditions. I don't want to feel nervous every time the light changes or the temperature drops a little.
That sounds very practical.
Yes, because I think with houseplants, personality matters too. Some people enjoy a challenge, but I prefer something I can care for without making it too complicated.
That's a really natural way to say it. Do you ever talk to your plants?
That's a funny question. Not seriously, but I probably do say things like, "Oh no, what happened to you?" if one starts looking unhappy.
I think a lot of people do that actually.
Probably. Do you?
Maybe not full conversations, but I definitely look at a plant and say, "You were fine yesterday," if it suddenly looks dramatic.
That's very relatable.
Plants can be surprisingly emotional for something that doesn't speak.
That's true. What about watering? Are you the kind of person who waters regularly on a schedule or more when you remember?
A bit of both, to be honest. I try to have a routine, but I also think it depends on the plant, the season, and the room. I don't think the same rule works for everything.
That makes complete sense. And that phrase, "a bit of both," is really useful for natural conversation.
Yes, definitely. It's one of those phrases that works in so many topics.
So if someone says they don't like plants at all, do you understand that?
I do, actually. Not everyone enjoys taking care of plants, and some people don't want one more thing to worry about. I understand that completely.
That's fair. I think some people like the idea of plants more than the reality.
Yes, exactly. They like how they look, but they don't really want the responsibility.
That sounds very true. And if someone wants to start with plants but feels nervous, what would you suggest?
I'd say start simple. Don't buy the most dramatic or delicate plant you can find. Choose something easy, see how it goes, and learn from that first.
That's very good advice. Start with something manageable.
That's the idea. Otherwise, people lose confidence too quickly.
This is such a good conversation topic because we started with one simple question, do you like gardening? And now we've talked about vegetables, herbs, flowers, pests, houseplants, routines, and advice.
That's exactly it, and that's the whole point of this lesson. A conversation grows when you react properly, ask connected questions, and stay curious.
Yes, you don't need difficult English. You just need interest, follow-up questions, and a little detail.
And this topic is perfect for that because it gives you so many natural directions to go in.
Okay, now let's look at the key phrases from the dialogue and see how to keep a conversation going in English.
Yes, because this lesson is really about conversation habits, not just plant vocabulary.
We started with, do you enjoy gardening? That's a good opening question, but to keep the conversation going, you need to continue after the first answer.
And then you can ask, what do you usually grow? Do you grow herbs or vegetables? What kind of flowers do you like? Do you have any plants inside the house?
That's right. Keep the questions connected. After someone gives an answer, ask something more specific. For example, what kind of herbs do you usually grow? What do you usually find easiest to grow? Do pests ever attack your plants? What do you usually do when that happens?
These questions make the conversation richer and more natural.
Exactly. Instead of changing the topic too quickly, stay with it and go deeper. Good conversation is not only questions, it also needs reactions. Useful reactions from this lesson. Really? That sounds lovely. That makes sense. That's so true. That sounds very practical. That's a really nice point. That's very relatable.
These phrases make the conversation feel warmer and more human.
Don't stop too quickly. Instead of saying, I like houseplants, say, I like houseplants because they make a room feel calmer, fresher, and more alive.
That gives the other person much more to react to.
Exactly. Here are some very useful conversation-building phrases. To be honest, it depends. A bit of both. What about inside the house? That reminds me, do you usually? What kind of? What do you usually do when that happens? If I'm honest, I completely agree.
These phrases help you sound much more natural.
Yes, and they work in many topics, not just this one. This conversation moved naturally like this. Gardening, herbs, vegetables, flowers, pests, houseplants, routines, space, conditions.
That's a very natural conversation path.
Perfect. You don't need random topic changes. Just keep following the same subject in a natural way. Let's quickly review some useful words. Herbs, vegetables, flowers, houseplants, pests, leaves, weeds, watering, routine, space, conditions.
And some very useful phrases: pick something fresh, attract bees and butterflies, look closely, work out the problem, take care of plants, suit your space and routine, bring calm, not stress.
Exactly. Those phrases sound very natural. Here's a short example. Do you enjoy gardening?
Yes, I do, especially in spring and summer.
Really? What do you usually grow?
Mostly herbs and a few tomatoes.
That sounds lovely. Do pests ever attack them?
Sometimes, yes, especially in warm weather.
What do you usually do when that happens?
I check the leaves, remove anything damaged, and try not to overreact.
See? The conversation keeps moving naturally. So, as you can see, keeping a conversation in English is not about difficult grammar.
It's about asking open questions, reacting naturally, and adding a little more detail.
That's true. And when you stay with one topic and explore it properly, the conversation becomes much easier.
And if you enjoy lessons like this, don't forget to subscribe.
It really helps the channel grow and reach more people.
And it helps more learners practice real natural English.
So subscribe, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
Bye!